Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sandy. For those of you who are new here, my husband and I went through IVF in the last part of 2017 and had a successful pregnancy in 2018. And today we are talking part 2 of our IVF journey. So let's get started. All right, so in 2012, we had our first consultation with a reproductive endocrinologist, which is an IVF doctor. And in that first consultation, they go over with you the tests that are getting ready to take place, because they test both male and female to determine what's causing you not to get pregnant. And for me, the next couple of months included several things, a physical exam. I also did what's called a saline infusion sonohysterography. I think is how I'm saying it right. It's also just called an SIS. It is a saline ultrasound, which the saline allows the uterus to be seen and scanned for polyps or any abnormalities, like, I don't know if I'm covering all of it, but I'm assuming like endometriosis or fibroids or any other like abnormality in the uterus. Then I also had a HSG done. It's an x-ray. It's called, I can't even pronounce it because I'm going to butcher it. It's something like hysterosalpingogram. I don't know. Big scientific terms. HSG. And it is an x-ray that is done to check if there are any blockages in your fallopian tubes. And then also I had a ton of blood work. I mean, I had lots of vials of blood drawn on me. And that is for them to check FSH. I know, a lot of acronyms here. FSH, which is a follicle stimulating hormone, and it checks your egg reserve and your egg quality. The blood work also checks you for genetic disorders, any diseases, and viruses, etc., etc. I just remember it was lots of blood drawn. And the day that it happened, I almost passed out. I had like 3 people surrounding me. I had one person trying to put an ice pack behind my neck. I had another person with the clipboard like fanning me. Somebody was running to get juice. Like, I was just like, time out, like no more blood drawn. It was a lot of blood. But then Josh also had to go through a series of tests. He also had to have the same amount of blood drawn too. They checked him for genetic disorders and diseases and viruses. And he also had a physical exam and had a couple other things that were checked on him. But then the results came back. And at first, our IVF doctor gave us a 1% chance of getting pregnant on our own. So that was a lot to take in. And he suggested that if time was on our side, and if we felt like time was on our side, that we could also go another route, which was having Josh checked by a urologist to confirm that he had what's called varicocele. And I'm not going to go into all of that in detail. If you want to look it up, you can look it up. But we did go see a urologist. Well, let me back up. He said that if we felt like time was on our side, then to go meet with a urologist and confirm if it was a varicocele. If it's a varicocele, you can have an outpatient procedure done, and hopefully that corrects any issues with the two of us getting pregnant, and we can get on our way. Or if we felt like we wanted to do IVF right now, he suggested that we actually do IVF, and that we did have a 1% chance in his opinion of getting pregnant on our own. The other thing is that IVF is considered elective surgery. And when it's elective, you have to be at a certain BMI for the surgery. And I needed to lose some weight in order to make that happen. And so that added a lot of pressure to me also. Yeah. You would think having a doctor telling you you've got to lose weight, you could like get it under control. But I think that just added to the bondage I felt like we were starting to feel. And when you've been navigating infertility for a few years at that point, and maybe it's like this with any other thing that someone might be dealing with, but you cope in some way. And I think for us, the way we coped was we went out and had a good time. Like, we went out to eat, we had dinner, like, we didn't have kids, we could go do whatever we wanted, you know. And I think we medicated with sitting down at a nice restaurant. That's what we did. And so to have to really focus on that for IVF was just kind of maybe a slap in the face. And it was not easy. But we did feel like time was on our side, plus it was going to be the less expensive route. So we did go meet with a urologist, and he did confirm that Josh did in fact have 2 varicoceles, and suggested that we have the surgery. And we did. Josh had outpatient surgery in May of 2012, and the surgery went well. And we had a 4-month checkup with the urologist, and he said, okay. Now the next 8 months, which would have made it a full year, 4 months from the surgery, we had our checkup, and then the next 8 months, he said, okay, get pregnant. And if you're not pregnant, then give me a call after a year. So we did another 8 months, and I did not get pregnant, which was absolutely just, it was terrible. It was rough. We made an appointment with the urologist again. At that point, he did some tests, and he suggested that we go back to see our IVF doctor and do IVF. And at that point, I think that's when things really started to sink in for us. Like, there is a real issue here. This is not going to be solved easy. We really had to have faith that God was in control. That was very hard. That's where a lot of the darkness started to come in, the what ifs. Gosh. All sorts of stuff. All sorts of stuff. I knew older couples who struggled with having kids and could not have kids. And they loved Jesus with all their heart, followed him as best they could, and he didn't answer their prayer. So how was I supposed to reconcile that for us? I want kids. Josh wants kids. But here we are struggling with getting pregnant. And now we're wondering if it's ever going to happen for us. Like, how do you reconcile that when you know people who love God? Like, I can be very analytical. And that was really, really hard for me. And then all of a sudden we started having friends who struggled And I wondered if God was bringing me this community of friends who struggled with infertility to help me along in my journey, or was he bringing me this community of friends because they were going to be people who would walk with us our entire life because we weren't going to be the couple that were blessed to have kids. And that was really hard to understand. God, what are you doing? I had such a hard time struggling with that part of it. That's where I had to learn to tell Satan to get out of my head. And it was not easy at all. So after we were told that, we weren't sure if we were happy with our IVF doctor at that point for a slew of other reasons, not anything to do with like the results. But we also needed to seek God and find out, okay, is this the journey you're calling us on? How do I know if IVF is right for us? Is IVF biblical? Is it okay? What does it mean? What's the process like? You hear all these things about having multiple, embryos, and you don't want to destroy any of them because that's life. And just all these questions that start swirling in your head, and it can be very confusing. It can be very overwhelming, and we just weren't sure about it. And I'm tempted to keep going. I don't know. I'll say this before we get into maybe the last one or two parts of this series. God was definitely in our story. I remember searching the internet for anything on God and IVF and is IVF biblical. And let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff out there where people say it's not. And you got to do what God's telling you to do. But I came across this blog post, and I wish I saved it, and I have tried to find it, and I cannot find it. So if someone finds this, you'll have to send it to me. But it was a couple who were going through IVF, and during the embryo transfer, it's where they bring in the embryos and they transfer them into your uterus. During that process, the doctor grabbed their hands, it was a Christian doctor, and prayed. And that doctor prayed that God would bring life into her womb. And she acknowledged that God was the author of life. And she thanked God for allowing her to play a role in helping families become families. And when I read all of that, I thought, you're right. You go to a doctor for other issues. Why can't someone who's struggling with getting pregnant go to a doctor and discover what's going on? Which is what we did. We just finally had to go through a process to get there. But now at this point, we had to decide, was God allowing a doctor to help us get pregnant? And is that okay? And in the article, she says, you can't play God. If you're reading this article and wondering if IVF is right or wrong, you already have a frame of mind around the fact that you can't play God, and you're already genuinely concerned if you are stepping out of bounds, and God knows your heart. And it was just like she was reading my mail, and it was so I don't know, it gave me peace and clarity in moving forward. When that would be at that point, I didn't know. IVF is very expensive, and at the time we weren't ready to just pull a trigger. We were still wanting to hold on to our faith and believe that God could do it naturally. And I also needed to lose some weight in order to go to start the process, because it's considered elective surgery. And I guess that's where I'm going to end. Maybe in the next video, I will talk about more of like the God moments and just some of the dark moments we had, some of the moments where God spoke to us, why we actually moved to a condo on the beach for 2 years, which was part of our story. And then maybe in the video after that, we'll do like the final leg of the journey when we actually started the IVF process. So we'll see. I'm still playing around with that. But like I've said in my other videos, if you like what you're watching, please subscribe below. If you have any questions or comments about the process, please ask. You can private message me. You can follow me on Instagram at shopgirldaisy, and you can message me there. Also, if there's anything that you want me to cover in a video, or maybe it's something that you're wondering and I missed, please also let me know what that is, and I will see if it's something that I should cover in this series. But until then, I hope you guys have a great day.